the topic wasn't offered by you, and eventually I was asked, what do you want your school board, or what do you want your topic to be? And it's the same thing that I would say was my original reason for running. It actually started in 2009 when the school board that was constituted prior to the one that I was elected to chose to close my children's elementary school. And at that point in time, I wasn't in it for education policy or public policy or tax policy or immigration policy or any of the other reasons that I've now become aware of why school boards matter. But that's the issue, is why school boards matter. People don't pay attention. The fundamental issue of teaching individual homeowners, individual taxpayers, not just parents of school-age children K through 12, but what is happening in education in America, has been happening in education in America, is largely something, frankly, that if you lean conservative, if you're full, conservative, if you're a moderate, or kind of pretty much anywhere else, the story is there's something wrong with teachers in America. There isn't something wrong with teachers in America. There isn't something wrong with curriculum in America. Because teachers in America and curriculum in America is governed by the head, and the head is a school board. Why do school boards matter? When I was first elected in 2011, I'd never been to a National School Board Association conference, a Virginia School Board Association conference. I thought they were boondoggles. Part of my campaign was, why are those school board members flying around the country once a year? That's a waste, and they shouldn't be going. And then I went, and then I realized that the nation watches a few 800-pound gorillas on what they're doing, how they're doing it, when they're doing it, why they're doing it, and it's a domino. You've seen they set up a whole gymnasium, and one domino goes, and they all go. Well, Fairfax County is one of the main dominoes in the United States, and it doesn't matter what the topic is. The degree of that influence cannot be underestimated enough. What happens in a few school districts in the United States of America, and it's not just school board members that are driving it, it's the Superintendents Association, because of course the superintendents really want to be in charge. The way the organization chart is, the way you need to, as individual voters, as individual homeowners, as taxpayers, you need to understand the org chart should be, if we've ordered ourselves in government properly, that you're in charge, it's your money, and I've often said, if anybody's watched a school board meeting, it's public money for public schools for public benefit. And yet, something happens because nobody pays attention to the bottom of the ballot. As soon as you have children, if your children are homeschooled, if your children are in private school, if your children are in diocesan Catholic or private Catholic school, you think the school board isn't important. It doesn't matter to me. If you don't have children, you think the school board isn't important to me. If your children graduate, you go, how many times have I been to a door and somebody said, oh, my children graduated? And the fundamental understanding has to be that if you do not have children in the school system, your children don't go to school, but your money does. Your money does. And that's the thing that is the crux of the matter in roughly 13,500 school districts across the country. There are roughly 90,000 school board members in 13,500 school districts. But most of those districts are infinitesimal. Like one high school, one middle school, one elementary school. That's a school district. I've met superintendents who have fewer students in their district than I do in my one child's elementary school in their entire district. Those are not the ones who are setting policy. What's happening is in select large districts, things like relationships with textbook manufacturers. That was kind of that's 10 years ago. Who's buying what textbooks in the country? That was a lot coming out of Texas, is whatever Texas bought, sort of that was the dominant. What's happening with later start times? Well, that's Fairfax. We start, trends on that. What's happening in math curriculum, in history curriculum? What's happening in family life education curriculum? All of those trends are being set by a handful of school districts. But it's not the people in the instructional services department. It's not even the heads of instructional services department. It's not superintendents. It's your school board. Your school board takes the money that most people do not realize in their local municipal budget. And I will give you a for example. In Fairfax County, the county budget is about, we're at about $4.8 billion. 53% of that roughly gets transferred right off the top to the school system.
Wow.
But that's only 76% of our budget. The rest of it is people's state taxes being rubber banded to Richmond and then back up again. So you have a $3 billion annual operating budget and another $180 million in capital that is used and distributed by policies set by 12 people in our case. We have 12 people on the Fairfax County School Board, some of whom are elected by not a fraction of the voting population, a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of the voting population. So therefore, if no one's paying attention to a school board race, nobody is paying attention to the money. If everybody takes their eyes off, and the conservative answer tends to be, well, that I'm just pulling my children out. Well, you don't see stories about what's happening on college campuses across the United States. They don't show up and materialize into leftist students or radical protesters who spend more time, outside an administration building protesting something than in, a classroom learning something, and pursuing, wild, ineffective majors that are not going to be producing things like, engineers and mathematicians and scientists and teachers. And in a case where we have a national teacher crisis, we have children who are prepared in the 13,500 school districts across the country for 13 years, K through 12, before they're delivered up and put onto college campuses. And they are bullied if they are a conservative student. They fear writing or studying or delivering a speech or writing a paper on anything other than what is messaged to them. And even if something isn't messaged to them, there's a fear anyway. So there's a culture of fear and bullying that is happening in our school systems, but it is the fish rots from the head that if we have something wrong with education in America, we cannot lay it at the feet of teachers, we cannot lay it at the feet of curriculum. And I will tell you, in particular, we had, as an example, just a week ago, a presentation to the Fairfax County School Board by instructional services team who have been directed, and this is a vote that happened by both the Board of Supervisors and the school board on something called One Fairfax. So One Fairfax, they're very good at branding. Who's not for Fairfax, and we should all be together. And under the guise of diversity and equity, we are having our instructional services team rewrite the history curriculum in our K through 12. Rewrite starting with 4th grade. And I don't know what your 4th grade curriculum looks like, but 4th grade curriculum is Virginia history. And we are having it rewritten, and it was delivered to us that it's being rewritten to address the inaccuracies in Virginia history, and you know what that means. We're going to get rid of Colonial Day. We're going to get rid of children going on a treasure trip to Jamestown because we can no longer, quote unquote, celebrate colonialism. Now, what has happened to teaching children history in context? We are not the Virginia we were at the time of Jamestown, and teaching children what happened and where we were and how we got to where we are today is the proper and ordered thing to do. But instead, through a very 1984 draconian type of effort, we are saying, no, what we're going to do is we're going to rewrite the curriculum. I, as a school board member, am probably not going to see the details on that until it's too late. I already don't. But the problem is that you have school boards that are going off, foraying into things and using your money, weaponizing your money against you because they're not paying attention to things like curriculum. They're not paying attention to the professional development that is necessary to deliver quality education to every student in the class, regardless of where they come from or what language they speak. That's the proper and ordered role of a school board. Instead, you have this agendaizing of people who get elected by very few votes because very few people pay attention, and then the handcuffs are off. They feel like, okay, now we get to do the things we want to do. It is no longer ordered. The next thing that is on the rules for Fairfax County Schools, and it is shocking, the brazenness. We went through a name change of Jeb Stuart High School to Justice High School. And regardless of how you feel about Confederate names, the problem is that the process was weaponized against the community and bastardized over and over and over again until it got to the result that the school board members wanted. The community voted, the students voted, the students in the school voted multiple times. They did not want the name change. The community, the people within the boundary of the school voted repeatedly that they did not want the name change. And in the end, we morphed the name change policy so many times that the final result was that the superintendent, at that point a new superintendent, was going to bring forward 3 names. 3 names, that was it, 3 names, and now we're going to name the school. Well, the 3 names didn't yield the result that they wanted, so then they changed it to 5 names, and in the end, we didn't pick any of the 5 names, we just made up a whole new name that wasn't any of the 100 names that the community brought forward and voted on. We made up the process. So we just went through that a year and a half ago, which started a whole series of other name changes across the Commonwealth, spending your money to change the name of schools, not addressing the national teacher shortage, not addressing the needs of individual students in the classrooms, but changing the name on the outside buildings and parquet floors on gymnasiums, etc. We have 1.5 million square feet of trailer space in Fairfax County, 800 trailers where children go to school every day. We're not addressing that, but we're changing the name of buildings. But it's like a Ginsu knife commercial. Wait, there's more. They have just brought forward that the name change policy that we just changed in order to change the name of Jeb Stuart, which we changed it several times, now has to be changed again because the board is currently constituted, has 6 members, at least 6 members departing, 6 members not running for re-election. And in their own words, this board is not going to be currently constituted as it is with its institutional knowledge of how to do things and how not to do things as of January 1st. So we need to hurry up and change the name of the school, the school board name change policy again so that we can get to all the other names that we didn't get to, that we want to get to, and put it out there without public comment first. We're going to decide first to change the names of the buildings, then open it up for comment, but we've already decided, we've already come to a consensus that we're going to change the names, then open it up for public comment, then we're going to vote on it by December 31st. So if you pick 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 schools, it's going to be millions of dollars. Millions, hundreds of thousands of dollars per school over and over again, and race it through by December 31st. That is the type of weaponizing that happens because nobody's paying attention. How is it that these policies go rogue? You know, nobody comes home from work after traveling to Washington, D.C. or Arlington or Fairfax and says, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to turn on a school board meeting and watch it till 1 o'clock in the morning because I have nothing else to do with my time. You have newspapers that no longer cover education at all. I mean, they don't cover national education, they don't cover local education, they don't cover trends in education. We don't talk about how our students are performing. We don't talk about their mental health. We don't talk about their wellness. 5 years ago, I started talking about vaping in schools. 5 years ago, wrangling the superintendent over and over and over again, begging to get PSAs out because I saw a trend that I thought was very, very dangerous in our schools. Now we have the CEO of Juul quitting. Why is it that the things that have necessarily to do with student wellness and student achievement get no traction, but we have one school board member who came forward and said, you know what we need to do? We've got some students who are worried about the number of straws that we have available in our schools. And the superintendent just reported out that we have this major achievement that we pulled straws off the cafeteria lines. No, he didn't say we got rid of them. We haven't stopped purchasing them. It's not that they're no longer available. They're just not readily available at the end of the line, so students still have to ask for them. This is touted as an accomplishment. I mean, you know, it sounds kind of funny, but this is a very serious issue that if you have one of the largest school board and the second wealthiest county in the nation, 12 members garnering the superintendent's time, staff time, support time, the time of the public on this, that they're driving the conversation. They're driving how we form policy and what we pay attention to. So we're back to this one Fairfax policy, and now we're talking about in Fairfax County doing, and if you pay attention, if you Google, you'll see stories in Richmond and Houston and all over the country, the talk about boundaries and equity and whether or not we're resegregating ourselves as a society, and that the school board is going to decide what boundaries are for the sake of equity to be fair and just. Now, I don't know if you hear what I hear, but the only way you can change a boundary and change what constitutes a school is to bus children to a different school. And they repeat over and over again, we're not busing. You know, we may have to do some transportation. I get lost, but instead of, and I have in my car, I meant to bring it in, for the last 2 weeks I've been going in and meeting with the senior leadership C-suite executives of my school system, and I have a book of charts, and I'm not kidding you, the paper, I don't even know what size paper it is, it's specialty paper, it's this big, and it's page after page, and it's infinitesimal size fonts, size 6 font. And it's school after school after school of their actual performance data. This is the nut of what we really should be spending all of our time talking about, is how individual subgroups of students, how are poor students doing in a school? How are Black students doing in school? How are Hispanic students doing in school? How are English language learners doing in school? This is what I spend and pull all my data apart looking at this information. If a school board, and a school board, and not 1 or 2 or 5,000 or 10,000, but if 13,500 school boards across the United States would spend time peeling apart individual student performance data at a subgroup level, they would no longer be weaponizing your money against you. They would be utilizing the money for the purpose for which it is intended, which is to educate and prepare students to be citizens of this country. I'm sorry, the global citizen thing doesn't work for me either. That's all well and good, but if you're a good citizen in this country, you're going to be a good global citizen. You know, look at the head of Volkswagen. You know what? He's a global citizen, and he really messed up by, you know, shipping us, you know, underhanded vehicles trying to get around our emissions. That's the kind of example that we should be teaching in our schools about what it means to be an ethical student, what it means to produce quality work, what it means to do to serve not only your purpose in life, how you're guided with your gifts that are naturally granted to you by God, but how do you serve your fellow man by doing that and doing it well in society. And instead, we talk about straws, or we talk about granting our student representative, who is a member of our board that is elected among peer students, opening it up to students from Loudoun County because some of them go to TJ. Why on earth does the school board spend any of its time talking about a student member representative to the board who has no voting power and opening it up to a family who lives in a different jurisdiction and doesn't pay taxes to come to our school? These are the things that are happening, and they're not happening once or twice. They're happening day after day after day in school district after school district across the nation. But it is these important 800-pound gorilla school districts like Fairfax County, and you know, you're a kin, you know, you're a kissing cousin, next door neighbor to us, that have so much to do with all those smaller jurisdictions. There's 136 or 138 school districts just in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So goes Fairfax, so go those. And so the mission, I hope that you come away with this, is that we learn as conservatives, or that we learn as involved taxpayers and homeowners, to pay attention to education in such a way that we don't just say the American education system is broken. These are all talking points, talking head points. American education system is broken, or it's teachers, or it's teachers. It's not. It is school boards, school boards, school boards. They're using your money, they're driving the curriculum, they're driving the agenda, and if it's anything from changing a boundary to whether or not we hand out straws, to affecting your ability to buy a home, raise a family, and retire in place, it is a school board at the bottom of the ballot that has more to do with your day-to-day life and the quality of life wherever you live than any other race. You know, sorry for the other people who are at other levels on the ballot. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, so our Q&A is going to come at the end in just a little while. For the moment,